Hey there, guys. Music fan here. How you guys doing? Uh, this is technically not an official album review from me. Rather, this is more kind of like a first impressions kind of video of me talking very shortly. At least I hope it's short about the new U2 record, Songs of Experience, was released yesterday. Although, funny fact, but when I was heading to sleep the previous night on the 30th, iTunes, or in my case Apple Music, since I pay for the app, released the songs about an hour earlier than midnight. I mean, don't get me wrong, I was kind of like, whoa, what the heck? But I was also kind of like, huh? Really releasing it a little bit early. But anyway, that's all for more the merrier for the music. But yeah, let's get talking about this record really quick. I mean, this has been like 4 years in the making now, like after Songs of Innocence, the previous record that was released, the whole downloading for free onto your iPad or iPhone or whatever Apple device, and like garnered huge, ginormous criticism across the board. But this time around is a lot more quieter, a lot more conventional in CD and vinyl and streaming services and whatnot. I have to say though, like the first time hearing this record on the previous night, I was a little disappointed at first initially. I mean, I always say, I tend to say that every U2 record that I'm disappointed with it at first, but I digress. But in all seriousness, I was really kind of like legitimately disappointed, let it down by this record at first, because I thought that Edge's guitar didn't have enough meat behind it. I thought Bono was a little bit too all over the place. But then upon listening to it a lot further, the next day and the next day after, which is today, it's coming out slowly but surely. I mean, U2 is a unique group in the sense that like a lot of their records, they don't hit at you right away, and they're not records that kind of give you everything that you want right on a silver platter. Rather, they kind of make you want to kind of re-listen to it over and over and over again repeatedly. For some people, that's very bothersome because they just want everything right now, and I have to admit, even me sometimes it can be like that. But other times, records like U2's, they kind of reward you immensely, like over time. I mean, like I suppose The Unforgettable Fire polarized people as well, but nowadays it's considered a legendary album. But again, I digress. And in comparison, like, I mean, I'm doing this kind of quick thing because I quite, I'm, I'm not technically sure how this record ranks amongst against all the other U2 albums of the past, especially with Songs of Innocence. And by the way, considering that this is inspired by a poem book, I don't exactly remember the author's name, but it's from these two books, Songs of Innocence and Experience. All over this record, you catch references to the book itself and also references to Songs of Innocence, like songs like Lights of Home has a snippet of Iris, Hold Me Close from the previous record, as well as songs like 13, There Is a Light, obviously a reference to Song for Someone from the previous record. But I really enjoyed the single releases prior to this record, like songs like The Blackout, especially the live video version of the song, which was just ripping of a song. And the best thing about me, initially I was kind of like, I mean, I made a song review of that song earlier, like a few months ago, and at first I was kind of a bit like, sounds kind of awkward, but now that I've heard it a couple of times, months later, I'm enjoying it a lot. Like it's a really cool doo-wop kind of song, or kind of like rock song in a way. This album kind of opens very differently, I have to say. Like, I mean, the opening song, Love Is All We Have Left. Normally, with every U2 album, or most U2 albums, they tend to start off with these very anthemic rockers or these very soaring edge guitars and all this different stuff. I mean, like this time around, it starts off very contemplative. This song is very ambient sounding. It's very kind of like with the synth and Bono kind of like singing like not free verse poetry, but it's kind of like almost kind of like telling you that everything's going to be all right because love is all we have left. Reminds me a lot of other kind of like Torch songs like MLK and The First Time from Zooropa. Kind of joins along the leagues of those songs. And Lights of Home also, initially I was kind of questionable towards it, but the further I heard it, the more instrumentation I heard behind it. This song kind of takes in vein of like other more gospel influenced tracks in U2's catalog, like Stuck in the Moment, We Can't Get Out of, and Still Haven't Found What I'm Looking For. And then you have other tracks that are just simply amazing. They're awesome. Like probably one of possibly two favorite tracks of mine off this record, Get Out of Your Own Way. That song is amazing. It's just awesome. Like, I mean, it's like a fusion between Invisible and Beautiful Day rolled up into one, and you get this particular song. I mean, this song is just amazing, like a fantastic, brilliant song. And American Soul, I really didn't like the song at first because it had a repetition again to Volcano from the previous album. But actually just starting from last night, literally, because I was out in New York City, and by the time I was coming back from New York City and I played this track, it grew on me a little bit. I mean, and you have other songs like Summer of Love and Red Flag Day, which lyrically touches upon a subject of refugees and talks about the migrant crisis going on. Especially Summer of Love, when you first read the title, you tend to think that it's almost a bit of a romantic statement, but when you analyze the lyrics further, it's a song about the migrant crisis going on in the world right now. And Red Flag Day is just awesome because it just reminds me of war. It's not as raw, it's not as visceral, not as heavy as the War album was, but it kind of sounds like a more funkier, more groove version of The Refugee, ironically enough, from the War record. Oh man, the song, The Little Things Give You Away, my second favorite song off this record. I mean, you have to really hear this song for yourselves. I mean, most likely you have, but if you haven't yet, I implore you, listen to it. The band did play this song in the previous Joshua Tree 2017 tour. They did not perform this song when I attended the second MetLife show in, I think, late June or July, but I've heard it a couple of other times via YouTube, and just hearing the studio version, oh man, it's just emotionally cathartic, and it's just one of those songs that is just reminds me of like Bad from The Unforgettable Fire. Like it starts off very quiet and very contemplative, and then it just gets louder and louder and just builds on top of each other, and until it reaches this epic climax of a track, and it's just simply emotionally arresting, and it's a beautiful song, really beautiful song. And then Love Is Bigger Than Anything in Its Way, another great track over here. Landlady also is another great tribute to his wife Allie. And the only major disappointment I have with this record, the only major one, is the blackout. And if you hear the studio version in comparison to the live version, video version of this song, it is just like quite literally night and day. And I just don't understand. I just don't understand the mindset of removing the raw, visceral nature of the live video version and just kind of like presenting a more polished studio version of this particular song. And I just don't get it. I just don't get it why the band chose that particular direction. Maybe it was the producers that pushed them to strip down. It's a weird analogy, but it's like you cut off a piece of a tree or a log, and it has like all sorts of nasty splinters on your hand, and it's all bloody and stuff. And then you have whatever person, or I don't know who decides to, let's make this little like buff it down and put like a laminate sheen over it so it's safe for you to sit on and it's safe for other people to sit on. That's the analogy I can use for this, for the studio version of Blackout. I mean, it's not bad by any means, and that breakdown in the middle of in the bridge section of the song is just maddening. It's just insane. Just the fewest of the only thing that would have been considered for the studio version, if you just remove the audience completely entirely from the mix, you kind of studio polish it just a teeny bit, and then poof, you would get the Blackout, and that is the most ripping song since the War album. But they did not for the studio version of this release, and that's what kind of drags down the record a little bit for me. It's kind of a bit of a shame, but hopefully now hopefully they could release the live version minus the studio, minus the crowd noise. I mean, Radiohead did that with My Iron Lung, and that turns out to be an awesome song. But as to what I think about this record as a whole, it's again, this is why I'm not heading into like an official review per se, even though this actually is kind of sounding like one, because I've heard it enough to kind of make initial thoughts about it, but I haven't examined it so deeply to the point where like, okay, now I know where to put this record, or I know where this record stands with all the other releases. It's not, I haven't fleshed this album out enough to really give out like a true analysis like I usually do. It's just a record that really is kind of a sequel more or less to Songs of Innocence, where now it seems that, especially given the circumstances that has happened to Bono in the last few years, he's had a brush of mortality, and this is now, I think, kind of a more reflective, a more introspective. The last record was introspective also, but this record is really kind of like almost kind of setting the stage. Maybe not necessarily for another album, but it's kind of setting the stage for the next generation. It's almost kind of like U2's like grandfather moment to their grandkids per se, if I can use that metaphor in a way. And it's almost kind of like telling the next generation, here's what we can teach you. These are all the experiences we've had, and now we leave it to you to do it. And also kind of a personal account from Bono himself of having a near-death experiences, and those kind of things just kind of really makes you rethink your life, and really makes you at least be grateful for the things you have. But I digress. Overall, I think this is my first listening to this would have gotten me like a below average record, but having listening to it repeatedly now for like the last 2 days, I would put it like a very above average record. It's somewhere between, somewhat like within the ballpark of Songs of Innocence for me, but in terms of like everything else, that in terms of like where it fits in the rest of their discography, that needs to be given a little more time, at least for me, you know, because I haven't, for reasons I said before. But it is an album that is another one of those slow growers in U2's catalog, and time will tell where this album will stand, just like time will judge how The Unforgettable Fire turned out to be. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Leave your comments in the comment section below. Tell me what you think. And I have a couple of more projects coming along the way, aside from a more serious video, but I will get to that later. What do you think of the record so far? And this has been Initial Thoughts, Mr. Music Fan, Songs of Experience, and I will see you guys next time. Take care.